How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Ride Along. We're here with another awesome guest, Miss Rae Thigpen. Now, she has worked as a registered nurse for over 38 years. She's been a registered nurse for over 38 years. She has worked at Christus St. for 30 years across a myriad of positions in the medical field. She started off as a registered nurse and has since then moved on to where she was directing surgical services, working at the Regional Compliance Board, and now she is over this organization or this group called DSRIP, which essentially is a grant program where they help find people who don't have insurance and things like that to help them get the doctors and the help they need for their different medical issues. So as we were mentioning before we started recording, she really knows all about the medical industry because she's seen it at the hands-on level, at the organizational level. I know she's got a lot of great insights. So welcome. Thank you very much for allowing us to talk to you. I know obviously in the craziness that we're in right now, you're extremely busy, so we really appreciate this. The first question I'm going to ask is going to be, what made you decide 38 years ago that medicine, the medical field is what you wanted to pursue?
Well, even as a child, I loved helping people,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'm a nurturer by build. And so I decided right after high school that I was going to pursue something in the medical field. And after my second year of college, I decided that nursing was the field that I was going to pursue.
And so how did you decide, where you were going to go work initially? Like, what was that process like of taking college classes for it? And did you have an idea that you wanted to go work at a hospital, or what was like that first plan like back when you were in college?
Well, in college, part of our orientation
Mm-hmm.
was in a hospital setting. And
Right.
so once I started working in the hospital, I decided, I think I like this. And
Mm-hmm.
so I just need to find my niche, find where I would like most to work.
Mm-hmm.
And that for me ended up being the operating room.
Gotcha. And so then, you worked, I assume, a couple years, and then you worked, where did you work for the first 8 years of your career before you got to Christian
At the
Science?
University of Mississippi Medical Center in Jackson, Mississippi.
And so were you just working as an RN, or what was like your,
Yes. I
so what is
started
that like,
just
starting out as an RN? What are those first couple of, because I'm sure there must be a lot of learning, growing pains and stuff like that come with it. What was that like?
That was a little scary
Mm-hmm.
initially because in nursing school, we work together as a group.
Right.
But once you graduate and you start your career,
Mm-hmm.
you're kind of independent.
Mm-hmm.
There is an orientation that they show you the ropes, so to speak, in the area that you're going to work. But the expectation is for you to become independent
Right.
and fly alone.
So at that point, it's like you are out there to the wolves. It's time to see sink or swim.
Absolutely.
And
And as far as the operating room is concerned, there is not a course that you can take in nursing school that prepares you for that.
right.
And so it's a on-the-job training.
So following your time at University of Mississippi, you said, right? Where did you go from there?
From there, I decided I wanted to get into management, to
Mm-hmm.
OR management. I did not find a job locally, so I went through a recruiter, and
Mm-hmm.
that's how I found Christus St.
Okay, so I think this is something that a lot of people probably don't really know about. They assume, you're an RN and they have their idea of that, from Grey's Anatomy and stuff like that. But when it comes to more of like what you were doing on the management side, I know obviously you're in a different position now than you were then, but what was it like when you were just getting your start in that? What was some of your day-to-day functions and what did that look like
As a manager,
as a manager?
um, I had worked as a staff nurse, and everybody always thinks that they know more than the manager. And
Right.
so I said, hey, if he can do this, certainly I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
But I learned a lot because working with people, because you have so many different personalities. And as the manager, you are expected to uh, learn how to deal with all of the people that are assigned to you. And so that was my greatest learning experience, how to deal with people.
So does it typically look like, you have a floor and there's X number of nurses kind of on your floor and you're just kind of making sure that they're going to the right rooms, doing the right operations and stuff like that? Or are you still having to go in people's rooms as well on patients? Like what is the major difference you'd see?
As far as operating room, as the manager, you're expected to make sure that every surgical procedure has all of the equipment and the staff that they will need to do that particular procedure.
Gotcha.
Also responsible for the schedule to make sure that the physicians know what time they're supposed to start and that all of their cases are lined up so that they can take care of each case. We also have the follow through to make sure when the patient finishes in that room that they make it to the recovery room or ICU or wherever their next destination.
So something I've always wondered is, like, it always seems like there's kind of different levels of nurses. Like, it's obviously not just, your RN, you have your LVN, your VSN, stuff like that. Can you really go into detail? Because I don't know much about that. Like, what are those terminology and what that means and some of the differences in between those positions?
Okay. Well, there are two types of nurses. You have the LVN or the LPN, and that's a licensed practical nurse for the LPN, or licensed vocational nurse, which is the LVN, but they're both one and the same.
Gotcha.
It takes about 18 months to complete an LVN program. And that nurse can take care of patients directly with just like the RN, which is the registered nurse. Let me just start with the education first. For the registered nurse, there are several levels. There's the diploma nurse, which that program has pretty much been phased out.
Okay.
There's an ADN program, which is the associate degree nurse, which is a 2-year program. There's the BSN program, which is the Bachelor's of Science in Nursing. Then you have the MSN, which is the Master of Science in Nursing, where you can go into different tracks, education, administration. That's also the track for nurse practitioners. They are master level nurses. And then you have the PhD program, where you can get a doctorate in nursing.
And so once you're doing the master's and the doctorate, is it, you're not really, do they still really do a lot of nursing, or do they come more into the, well, you were at the managerial role where they have some nurses under them and they're running a lot of the operations side of it, or does it just kind of depend on the individual?
It depends on which track you choose. If it's education or research, of course, those are not bedside programs. But if with the nurse practitioner, you can do geriatrics, you can do pediatric, and those nurses are hands-on, but they are higher degree, so they can write prescriptions, they can do diagnosis, they do examinations of the patients. They function as an extender of the medical doctor.
Gotcha. So say, you get your associates and bachelors, how do they decide where this RN gets placed in? Like, what division or department, I guess, do they go into? What does that process look like?
Well, it's two-phase. One, with the registered nurse, you choose which area you would like to work in.
Okay.
Because as a registered nurse, as a nurse going to school, you have your clinical rotation, so you rotate through the different areas.
So you really get to kind of start
figure out what you want,
idea
of what you want, and decide what you don't want. And then once you apply to the hospital or clinic or wherever you decide to work, then whatever positions are available, then that's how you get to choose.
Okay, that makes sense. So then, fast forwarding to when you were the regional compliance officer, what did that position entail? What did that look like, and how is that different than what you had been doing?
With in the manager role of the operating room, that took me away from patient care.
Gotcha.
And so this role was being responsible to make sure that all of the rules, the regulations, the government rules that apply to hospitals, that we are following those, especially as far as billing is concerned. Because with the government is very strict about what you can bill for.
Okay, that makes
sense. And so we have to make sure that we only bill for the services we provided. And so these rules change almost on a daily basis.
Really?
So it was my responsibility for our local hospital to keep up with those rules and regulations and make sure all of our departments, whether it was nursing, billing, revenue, integrity, that they were up to date with the latest information.
And so you were doing this all hospital-wide?
Yes,
Gotcha.
just for Christus St. Michael.
Just for Christus St. Michael.
Right.
So,
And compliance officers at all of our hospitals. I was just located here.
at Christus St. Michael, what is like the typical organizational hierarchy for nurses? You know what I mean? So like, you have your first starting out RN, and then who's directly above them, and so on and so forth.
You have your staff nurse.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can have a nurse coordinator. That's the
Mm-hmm.
person who is responsible for kind of day to day. You have your nurse manager, who also is responsible for scheduling and making sure that all shifts are covered.
Right.
Then you have your director, who's responsible for everyone.
For everybody.
Right, for everybody. And then you have the chief nurse executive,
Mm-hmm.
and she or he is responsible for all nursing.
And so they would be the person at the top of the hospital food chain, kind of for nurses, and it's their whole job for everybody.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
That's chief nurse executive is responsible for all nursing throughout the hospital, whether it's on the clinical floors or in the ancillary departments, because there are nurses who work in radiology and places like that. The chief nurse executive covers all nurses.
So how do you typically like advance or get promoted? Because I feel like, you've really gone through a whole lot of different positions like that. So what is that process like of actually being promoted? Like, what does it take, skill set? Like, you know what I mean?
Yes, but the twofold, first of all, you have to have an interest and decide what is it that you would like to do. Education plays a large part of that, because the higher you go up in just about any role, they want you to become a higher level of education. So when I started as a staff nurse, and even becoming in the role of director of surgical services, I had my bachelor's of nursing, and then I pursued a master's. My master's, however, is not in nursing. My master's is in business. Because at the time, in the director level, I was not responsible for direct patient care. It was more on the business side, budget, revenue, things like that. In nursing school, those were not courses that they taught. So I wanted to become more proficient. So I pursued my master's in business.
So when you were going throughout, nursing school and everything like that, what did you see, and from nurses you've seen today, as the most important skill set someone can have? Is it like a good, level in science, health, understanding math, stuff like that, or interpersonal skills?
Interpersonal skills, you have to have compassion, and you have to have empathy. Because if you don't like working with people, being a nurse is going to be a struggle.
Yeah.
Because you have that direct care. Patients will tell you, things that are going on in their lives, and you have to be empathetic with them, help them through whatever they're struggling. As far as the skill set for classes, you need to have a science background, because that will help.
Right.
There are a number of science classes that you have to take.
So how has recruiting for nursing and the whole education process really changed from your time working in healthcare? If it has.
Well, I believe that it has increased, because I remember when I started out, there was no one that came to our school to recruit us.
Wow.
When we graduated, and see, that was almost sounds like the Stone Age now, that, we pursued the hospital or clinic or nursing home, wherever we wanted to work. Nowadays, they send recruiters to the colleges to start recruiting before the nurses even graduate.
Wow.
To give them an opportunity to show them what the hospital or clinic offers, and try to entice them to come.
And why do you think that is, this, pretty big change where they're sitting out recruiters? Is it a shortage of nurses? Do you think it's, just an easier way to get more competitive people? And why do you think that change has happened?
I think for both of the reasons, because there's such a need. There was a gap several years ago in nursing where not a lot of people went into the nursing field. And so what happened, we are aging out.
Right.
Getting to the baby boomers are getting ready to retire.
Hmm.
And there is such a need that now the hospitals that are even offering tuition reimbursement for even staff who are non-nurses, if they're interested in going to nursing school,
Wow,
to pay for to offer them scholarships to go into nursing.
that's crazy. So you could, what kind of position would it be to where that they would be offering that for? Just
uh, Certified nursing assistants.
uh-huh.
It's, we have even had staff that worked in our cafeteria, worked in
Really? That's awesome.
housekeeping,
Wow.
had a desire to become a registered nurse,
Hmm.
and they were assisted to get their undergraduate classes to get into a
Yeah.
nursing program.
So I bet, healthcare is one of those things that has just exponentially changed, even in the
Mhm.
last 5 years, or the last 20, 30 years, and so on and so forth. How have you seen technology change like the operations that you guys do and how nurses operate on the day to day?
Um, and I can speak mostly from my experience in the operating room.
Mhm.
Um, Years ago, everything was hands-on.
Right.
And all patients that had to have a open procedure, we opened the patient.
Hmm.
There was an incision, you opened the patient and you took care of it. Now technology is so that you can make a very small incision
Hmm.
and get this same result.
So
And
has
then
that
the time
caused a
the
lot of
patient.
Does
Go
that
ahead.
cause a lot of the curriculum to have to kind of change and adapt around that technology for teaching
That
nurses?
is correct. But
Mhm.
still, a lot of that is taught on the job.
On the job? Wow. So then, now we're in pandemic era, obviously. How have you seen that drastically change what you have to do and what nurses all across the world are having to do?
Well, with what's going on with the pandemic,
Mhm.
we're almost going back to the way it used to be, meaning there's so much hands-on that is required now. With technology, you could just, view the patient, ask the patient questions, kind of click, 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 and you're done. Now we have to go back to hands-on.
Really? And why is that? I feel like they would want you to, social distance or
Want
whatever.
you to stay away, but some things you can't do visually.
Right.
You have to touch the patient in order to do it.
And do you think that once this is, over, that some of these changes will kind of stay and, become part of regular routine like they used to not be?
Yes, they talk about the new normal, and not that it was ever normal because no patient presents the same way.
Right.
But what we have to do is find a way not only to take care of the patient, but to
Mhm.
protect the caregiver
Right.
because nursing is at risk. All of the ancillary department staff at risk the closer we get to patients.
Hmm.
But we have a responsibility to take care of them.
Oh, definitely. And I think, nursing is one of those fields that probably has the most variability, and you never know what's going to come through those doors on a day in, day
Absolutely.
basis. What would you say was the most, or has been the most rewarding part of working in the healthcare industry?
For me, the most rewarding is to see people get better.
Mhm.
They come in with a problem, and to see us be able to take care of them and for them to lead and lead a better life.
Right.
And so that has been the most rewarding. That's also been the toughest when
Mhm.
you have patients to come in and they don't leave.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, have you seen a downtick in the amount of patients who show up to the hospital that don't have, say they don't have coronavirus or something like that? Are people going for as many reasons as they used to, or has it kind of toned down the amount of people go to the hospital because they're scared of potentially catching something? Like, what does that look like?
Well, what that looks like now is yes and yes.
Yes and yes.
We do have we do have a number of patients who are afraid to
Hmm.
come because they think they may get something. So that happens with outpatients who just come for outpatient procedures. We
Hmm.
have at one point had put that on hold because we didn't want to expose patients.
Hmm.
But the same issues that have been going on before the coronavirus is still, people are
Still
still
there.
having heart attacks, people still
Right.
having strokes, We are having patients with diabetes and hypertension that still come with these. But we do have a number of patients who are coming with wanting to be tested for the COVID because they listen to social media.
Is
And
that
as
most
they
like someone says that you're all on eggshells and everyone feels like there's a lot of anxiety that goes around when someone says that at the very beginning of this, or
Yeah,
yeah,
and that has happened. So if you have a cough, and all of a sudden I must have symptoms.
uh,
Well, there are a lot of things that you
right,
cough for. This is allergy season. We're still dealing with the flu. We're still dealing with pneumonia.
hmm
And so we are glad that we have a phone line set up that people can call and ask questions.
right.
And we will give them advice of where, yes, you need to come to the emergency room, or no, this is something you can manage at home and talk to your physician the next morning.
hmm Do you think this is really going to cause a lot of more people to think nursing is the route to go to because how in demand and how needed it is? Do you think this is going to incentivize a lot more students, high school, middle schools, who see how important this is to society and how valued these positions are, that a lot more are going to kind of want to go into that field?
I hope so,
Mhm.
because one of the things is nursing, the need for nurses is not going to ever go away.
Right.
And because of that reason, we need more people to come into the profession, because
Mhm.
we're always going to need someone to take care of us. And I say us because I am part now of the aging population that's going to need care. And so I hope there will be nurses out there who are as committed as I have been to
Mhm.
help take care of them.
Well, yeah, I know. I don't want to take up too much of your time because obviously this is a crazy time and we really appreciate all the hard
Yeah.
work you guys are doing and it means a lot to everybody. But if you could look back across your entire career at your 18-year-old self and kind of give them a token word of wisdom or line of advice that you kind of gleaned from your experience through working in the healthcare industry, what would that be? I know that's a tough question.
That is. Looking back, I would say um, the the field that I've chosen to be a nurse. If I had it to do it all over again, I would do the exact same thing.
Well, that's awesome. That's great
Yeah,
to hear.
I have enjoyed nursing that much.
Hmm
I'm a hands-on person, um, and I love people. I love educating. I love sharing knowledge. I also have done that through my medical mission, which
Right.
has given me an opportunity to reach people who probably would not have access to care had we not gone and visited with them.
Yeah, talk about that a little bit, about kind of what
Um,
before we go.
okay, for the last 26 years,
Mhm,
I've been a medical missionary to Guatemala. A specific city there is called San Raimundo.
mhm,
I've worked with First Baptist Church Moores Lane and First Baptist Church Mount Pleasant.
mhm.
And with both those groups, we have gone for an 8-day mission trip. We've provided care, clinic care to patients. And because I'm an OR nurse, we've also brought teams to do surgical procedures. And
Wow.
in that 8 days, we've done anywhere from 80 to 100 procedures.
Oh my goodness. That is insane. Well, you know, that is absolutely crazy. And on top of already being a nurse and accomplishing so much, thank you again for being willing to join us on this interview and stuff like that. We appreciate it.
You're
To all our
welcome.
listeners out there, hopefully this is insightful. It was really insightful to me. I already learned a lot more than I would have, watching Grey's Anatomy or House or something like that. We thank you again. We want to encourage everyone to follow us on our social media and stuff like that and tune in for the next one. Once again, thank you very much and good luck with all this craziness that's going on.
All right. Just keep praying for us.
As yes, ma'am.